Welcome everyone. We'll give it a minute here. Let's get started. How is everyone on this Monday? It's a green day out there. A little bit of interesting setups we're seeing in the markets. We will basically be going through the market scan live here today. And so this will be a little bit different, right? I haven't actually taken a deep look at a lot of these charts yet. Generally, I think the last time I wouldn't even say it was a deep market scan, but Saturday I did take a look at some charts. As you guys know, we did the video, but took yesterday off, was kind of watching it a little bit as my alert started to go off a little bit here when it finally hit the 7,600 level. So the target has been reached on that long trade that I was on. And what I want to do in today's stream is kind of just do my live market scans, right, with you guys on the stream here, just to kind of show a little bit of my thought process as far as how I check out the charts every week and look for setups and set alerts and all that good stuff. And so we'll do that. Please, if you have any ideas, if you have any setups that you like that you're watching, throw them out there. We'll take a look at the charts together. And of course, by no means is this any are these any recommendations, or does this necessarily mean I'm going to take all of these trades? By no means is that what I'm doing here. What I'm doing is I'm going to create a little bit of a watch list, set some key levels that I'm watching, support, resistance levels, and then just kind of have a little bit of a plan, if you will, right, to names that I'm watching. This changes day by day, but what I like to do is a couple of times a week I'll do kind of a full scan just to see high level what's going on. I probably spend more time than I should looking at the charts still, but I certainly don't spend as much time as I used to, just because I've got a pretty good little rhythm down. I don't feel the need to constantly be monitoring all the charts and the price action. I set my alerts. I'll peek at them a few times a day, a handful of names, and that's it. You know, and technology makes it easy. We've got the TradingView app, and we've got email notifications and all kinds of stuff. You can, there's just so much you can use to leverage it. So I know that's usually one of the challenges is, if you don't have time to trade, or if you can't be monitoring the charts constantly, how do you do it? The best way to do it is to set a little bit of a routine up where you dedicate a decent amount of time, maybe a good hour or so, to kind of do a full scan once or twice a week. And then throughout the week, you can just kind of take a peek and look at it here and there. Certainly, if you have more time, you can be more active and react a little bit quicker and all that good stuff. But I know the majority of folks don't, right? They're not trading crypto full time per se, and you really don't need to be honest with you. So let me take a swig of my coffee here. It's kind of mid morning my time, but I'm on my third cup here already. So, all right, my friends. Let's get to it. So what I want to do is quickly look back at the last couple of setups we're watching here. BTC. There's two things that I like about this here. If you look at the higher time frame, right, this is the daily chart. This is Binance USD Tether equivalent. So this is the daily chart of BTC. And one thing to make note of here is, after a pretty good downtrend that we've seen here for the last several months, sure, there's been some attempts to rally, but this is a pretty significant base that is being formed now. After multiple attempts to break down from this level, there are some support levels starting to be formed here. Yes, you could argue there's that inverse head and shoulder. We talked about that in the last stream, but at the end of the day, it's the key horizontal price support resistance levels that I'm watching. Now, in my last live stream, not the video I did on the weekend, but the last live stream, we were talking about, hey, this could have a little bit of a shakedown and then rally and quickly reverse. That's exactly what happened. And so that was the basis for my trade that I was in over the weekend. There was a key support level that was being watched here, very short term. Let me zoom into the 1 hour charts here. Let me adjust this here and close this out for you guys. Actually, I'll go 4 hour chart. That makes more sense. So there was this very nice support level, and you had a quick shakedown, and it recovered quickly. Very positive. That's what you like to see, right? If it would have just kind of lingered down here at the lows for more than a few candles and then just bounced off that support and kept going down, that would have probably been a good short entry. But what I was looking for was that shakeout reversal, and that's what we found. So I didn't take anything short here. I was still flat, but when it started to recapture that 7,100 level, I entered along here at the upper 7,100 price range, and pretty much have been riding that until today. My target on that was 7,600 for that quick trade, which we clearly wicked right over, and price is honestly still looking pretty good. It's trending higher. You get these flat lines and it rallies. A little bit of a shakedown yesterday, quick recovery again on volume, sitting tight, poked above 76 here, briefly pulling back. I think it takes another run at 76 personally. I think it's going to pop over. So the way I'm approaching this now is I'm taking a fresh perspective now, right? The first trade was a short-term trade quickly, you know, it was on margin and all that good stuff. That has been met, right? My objectives were met, my targets were hit. So certainly I'm going to bank some of that. There's just no reason not to. But now what I'm doing is I'm taking a higher time frame point of view. Going back to that daily chart, let me move this line over. This is 7,600. You can see 7,600, you know, for the last month or so, month and a half, has been a significant level of resistance, right? Just horizontal price resistance. Multiple attempts to close above it, has not been able to, but here we are taking another shot at it. This time, I think it does hold over. We'll see if it does, right? Obviously, anything can happen. This can reject from here and then finally pop over, but I'm looking at this as a higher time frame trade, meaning a longer term swing trade, not a you know, couple of days quick trade. And so I'm going to be watching this for some longer term reversal. If it does start to break above and, you know, hit 1,700, 8K, and then pull back a little bit, this little zone, right, 7,600 to around 8K is going to be an interesting level to be watching. How price reacts there, that also would be a good kind of secondary entry point, a breakout point. And then the next target up above that, right, would be this mid 8Ks, 8,400, and then around 8,800, and then of course these most recent highs, you're talking 9,500. That's a big move out from here at that point, right? You're talking, you know, 20+% if it does something like that. And, you know, there's just no way to tell if it's going to do that. I always take it one day at a time, look at the trends. And even if it goes that high, right, there will be pullbacks along the way. It doesn't go straight there. But that's a nice setup that we're seeing. A little bit of a reversal starting to show up. And so I'm getting more positive, more bullish from a longer term perspective if Bitcoin can start to show some positive action after a pretty steady climb downward. You can see here, this is the weekly chart holding above this prior mid 6K range after a good rally, significant pullback. But it's important to note the higher time frames, the weekly chart, still trending below the 10 weekly EMA, which is right around that $7,700 mark right now, and the 22 EMA is, you know, above the 10. So technically speaking, it is bearishly, you know, it's technically bearish, right? It's in favor of the sellers, but the fact that we've seen this multi-week consolidation here, multi-month now, you know, bodes well for the bulls in terms of a potential accumulation zone being set. Now we want to see some follow through on the weekly charts. And I mean, you know, we're always looking at the lower time frames and it looks like a big move, but when you look at the weekly charts, you know, these are all very tight weeks, very small, low volatility weeks. A big move, you know, we're talking $1,000, $2,000 on the weekly level. So that's what I'm looking for if things really start to get going here. Of course, we want to see volume come in when that happens. So certainly one trade I'm going to be watching this week is the Bitcoin daily chart in terms of, you know, a longer hold if that starts to happen. The nice thing about BTC is, you know, when looking at the daily charts, you can tend to move a little bit slower when you're trading the alts, and especially if you're looking at leverage, then you want to have your time frame a little bit lower so you can take advantage of some of those smaller moves. Question on here, do I recommend trading with leverage? Generally speaking, if you're new, I would not personally. I do it a lot with stocks, and you have to generally with stocks just because, you know, you use leverage to buy, you know, to up your buying power basically. And so you can turn a $50,000 account into a $200,000 or $100,000 account pretty quickly with margin, but it's just daily margin for stocks, right? I don't generally hold overnight. With crypto, you can hold longer, obviously, and they'll give you either 2x, 3x. I certainly would not, absolutely not recommend any of those super high leverage places. You guys know what I'm talking about, those exchanges where you get, you know, 10x, 50x, 100x. That's just crazy. Volatility is just too high in this space for that. So I generally will use leverage for something like Bitcoin, some of the bigger caps basically. I don't do it at all for small names. The big caps I do, especially for Bitcoin, just because right now when these low volatility periods are here, you know, a 6% move in Bitcoin on margin makes for a pretty decent trade. It doesn't look like a whole lot, but you know, when you're trading on margin, something like this turns out to be pretty decent from an account perspective, right? And so that's what I'm looking for. But good question. Generally, I don't recommend trading on margin, especially with if you're relatively new or if you don't have the time to watch it closely, because it can very quickly get away from you, and you know, those losses start to add up. And again, trading it's all about risk management. It's all about risk reward and probabilities, and managing risk is a huge part of trading in general. Whether it's crypto or stocks or forex, anything, you got to manage a risk, and margin will add to risk, generally speaking. But it increases returns, right? There's a trade-off: high risk, high return. Okay, so let's see here. So that's BTC, still looking positive. I'm taking a fresh perspective. As I said, I closed out a lot of my margin trade here. I'm still holding some long, but it's not on leverage anymore. It's just going to see what happens here on the daily time frame. If it pulls back, what I'd like to see, notice this 22 EMA here on the 4-hour chart. It pulled back there a couple of times, this little value zone, right? So if we see a little bit of a pause, pullback, 7,400 is that first level that I'm going to be watching as a potential re-entry point. And then below that, if it really starts to take a dip, then I'll be using some fib levels as potential retracement zones. So if we look at those, I'm going to start from the impulse leg, right? So basically this big green candle up to the top, assuming, of course, it could certainly blast right through right now, but assuming that this most recent wick was the near-term top, then the 382 level takes you around 73.65. 50% at 72.87, and then 7,200, right? And don't want to see it get much below 7,200. If it does, this really starts to look like a failed attempt at 7,600 again. So don't want to see that. That's probably your line in the sand, if you will. Let me close this out here. And so those are the two levels that I'm watching. So the 382 and the 50% is probably the stronger bets right now. So if it does decide to pull back, that's what I'm going to be watching. I've got some alerts set on a different trading pair, but I'm going to be watching this. If it pops over 7,600 again, then you know, I'm looking at that as a higher time frame entry breakout. If it pulls back, I've got some alerts at around 7,400. I want to be notified if it breaks below that, and then I'm going to be watching the price action at this level for a potential re-entry for another swing long. But the alts are really what I'm liking more now. I'm liking more the alts. How would, let me see, note, how would a pullback be confirmed as in a not a failed attempt? The depth of the pullback is what I would look at. So if it runs up here and it starts to pull back, if the volume starts to decline on the pullback, or if it's shallow, then that looks positive. That's actually very healthy. And in that scenario, I may front run the pullback a little bit and start to scale in, and then keep a stop around the 618 level or so, so 7,200, right? So that's kind of the pullback zone that I'm looking for, if you will. 7,400s, most 7,200. If it really starts to slice down below that, to me it looks like too deep of a pullback. That's just my approach. And if you go to the daily time frame here, you can see the 10 EMA is riding nicely. It looks like it wants to pop, honestly. It looks like it wants to break over that 76 level, but we'll see. All right. Let's see here. So that's BTC here. Probably one of the cleaner looking charts right now, setups for trades. Again, just to be clear, in case you just joined, I mean, I'm taking a fresh perspective on this right now. I did clear out that short-term long that I was on. Still have a long position, but I closed out all the margin side of the trade. I'm looking more at the alts, as I said. And let me go to the trending list here. And you can see the bot status has gone long again over the weekend. It was getting choppy there for a while, but all right, so I'm gonna just it's gonna be open mic here. I'm just gonna walk through some of these names, and what I do is I just kind of curate a list of what's in play, if you will, and then from there, my step process here is basically identify the names in play, right? Whenever I'm trading, I always want to look at where the action is. Where's the volume? What's trending? You know, what just had a recent breakout? That sort of thing. Whether it's crypto or stocks, right? Focusing on the names in play is always going to put the probabilities in your favor, just because you get momentum, you get volatility and all that good stuff. And then after that, what I do is I identify what are some of those key levels, right? What's next support? What's next resistance? You know, what are the targets? All that good stuff. And then trend lines. If there's a trend line that it's been following, that could also be used as a support or resistance level. And then from there, I'll set some alerts, which you'll see me do here near term. And all that does is notify me when a price level, a significant level, is taken out, or if a pullback is happening when it hits that level I'm looking for. And then that kind of alerts me so that I can go back and potentially make some trading decisions, right? And then I'll have a plan, right? Is this a pattern-based setup? Is it a trend-following setup? Is this a reversal trade? It's been in a big downtrend and now I'm looking for a bounce. What are the targets? All that. So that's kind of what goes through my head when I look through these charts. Just keep that in mind. I'm going to be making some notes here on a different screen, so you may hear the keyboard chattering away, and that's just me kind of jotting some notes down as I go through these charts, and then we'll narrow it down to kind of some of the better ones that I'm watching here today. Of course, this will all change in the next couple of days as this space just moves so fast. And absolutely, if you have some names, throw them out there. We'll take a look at those. I see EOS, BAT, Waves. I will be looking at gold as well. That's been getting a lot of attention lately, and so we'll look at that. All right, cool. Oh, quick reminder. Before I get started on the charts, I did post a coupon code here if you're interested in checking out the Node Insiders, you know, screens and alerts and all that good stuff. You can get that $20 off your first payment. 2020 is the code when you check out. You can learn more. There's links in the description at learncryptotrading.info. It'll tell you a little bit more about the site, but this site you can also come to here and check out. If you go to the Education Center, there are several videos that are opened for just anybody to watch, so you can go check those out. One I would recommend is the cardinal rules of technical analysis, as well as the support and resistance videos, just because that's just fundamental, right? Understanding key support and resistance right here. Horizontal price support, how close support is, or you know how recent it is. That's kind of the core of my trading process. Yeah, you can get into a whole bunch of different indicators which will help you, but at the end of the day, it's all about price levels, generally speaking. All right, so Dash, let me start with some of these names. I'm going to jot them down here, and then we'll quickly go through. Monero, GoChain has been on there. ETH is looking nice. Bitcoin Cash has already been running. I may skip some of the smaller cap names if I see them on here, so don't take offense if it's one of your favorites. I just a lot of it is just my personal preference, right? I'll look at some names and I just know that I don't like to trade them personally from experience. So there's just some names where I even if they look good, I just won't personally trade them. But that's just me. Doesn't mean you got to do that. EOS, Zcash, Zcoin, for example, probably not one I will trade. Let me see. What the riff? Pivx, probably another one that I won't trade. But Pivx was looking pretty good there. Ethereum Classic is another one on the list. Pulling back. Keeper Network, Litecoin, and of course Mana. Mana's actually pulling back right now. I like the way it's setting up again for a potential secondary run here. We'll look at that guy. Mana and Litecoin. Okay, so I've got about 20 names on the list here. Let me see. There's some in the comments. I will add them to the list. We'll do Cardano. We'll do, let me see. I've got EOS already. BAT. We'll do BAT. And that'll give us plenty to go look at. Raven and XX. All right, I'll keep an eye on that. If we have time, I will come back to those. Looks like Waves was a request. And okay, cool. Let's get to it here. Yeah, XRP. You got to have XRP on there. Now, that's because of the Binance futures, but hey, that's a big volume in there and all that, so certainly worth noting. And then what I'll also do is, let me see if the bot status is showing anything of interest here. I'm going to go with, let me see what the bot status is long right now. Litecoin, EOS, Neo, XMR, Dash. Okay, all of those are on the list already. BAT, it's long BAT on the daily, flat on the 4 hour. It's on the list, so we'll certainly take a look at those. Okay, cool. Let's rock and roll here. Let's get to it. Let's see what else is happening. If we have time, we'll look at the BMI watch list and some alerts and see if anything else pops up. But for now, we got plenty to look at. So starting with Dash. Dash has been on the move already. I'm going to do both BTC and USD pairs on some of these, okay? So looking at Dash, Dash has had a nice breakout. The last breakout right here was around that 60-50 level on the BTC pair. And you can see the volume associated with that breakout. That was just a solid breakout as it pushed over that resistance level here. Big volume. I mean, massive volume relative to the prior candles here. So good breakout volume. Got a little volatile here, but held above the breakout point. And even if you took that as a breakout trade, meaning you didn't take it until it actually broke out, you know, you're up about 21% versus Bitcoin, and that's considering Bitcoin has had about a 6 or 7% move already. So pretty good stuff here. It does feel extended. If you look at the 4-hour RSI, it's way up here in the high 80s. Doesn't mean it pulls back, but at this point, from a risk perspective, from a risk reward perspective, I wouldn't chase it here. What I would rather be looking for is a secondary consolidation. Considering how strong the move was, you could get that secondary consolidation or a pullback to some of the key moving averages, and then start to enter there for a secondary leg higher. If we look at the key levels, let's identify some key support resistance levels. Let me zoom out here a little bit. Higher time frame, I'll highlight it with this one here. All right, you can see that this zone here, right where it's pausing, was a prior support level back in October, and then it broke from that point, dropped, rallied back into late November, couldn't clear it, and then it was down from there. Meaning, here we are trying to pause again. So between here and here is where I would like to see, I wouldn't want to see it get back above that. I would rather see a little bit of a consolidation either from here or into this zone, and then looking for another breakout from there. So that's what I'm going to be watching for. I'm not going to chase this one here, of course, but what I'd like to see is a pullback. It's just very strong. If you go to the daily time frame, I mean, this was a big loser last year and the year before. I think it's due for a good bounce, a reversal trend trade at least. And so on the daily chart, the volume here is significant. I think it has more to go personally, but I'd like to see a pause first. The daily 10 EMA is still way down here just because how quick that move has been after the breakout. It's basically just above the breakout point. So a little bit of a pullback here, maybe for a day or two, would be ideal for me. And so that's what I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to set an alert here, see if we can get a break or a little bit of a pause here. So what I'll do is that 6,800 level, if it breaks below that, then that will be kind of my first letting me know that it's pulling back. Other than that, I'll come back to it looking for a secondary entry point, either a some sort of consolidation here, cup and handle, ascending triangle, that sort of thing, symmetrical triangle, bull flag or something. That's what I'm going to be looking for here. So I'm going to just make some notes. Extended, look for consolidation or pullback. All right. And then looking at it from the USD side here, real quick. We'll just go to Coinbase. Just nice steady trend. It's trending very nicely, but any pauses or pullbacks I think would be ideal. And then from the USD side, that $66 level looks like your first resistance. You did get a pretty good wick up to that point. And then above that, it's around $75 or so is your next target level. All right, that's Dash. Let's go to XMR, BTC real quick. XMR has been on the move for some time already. Very strong push off the lows here for the last few days. 4-hour chart, has been trending nicely here. And again, this was a pretty good reversal here. If you look at this big base that it started to put in, and then a lot of these names here recently are starting to break out above some of that near-term resistance. This one pushed right through to the next target after a little bit of a brief pause, right? From zooming left here, you can see this was prior support, and you had a rally into that over the weekend, pulled back for a few candles right to the 10 EMA, and then boom, give you that secondary leg up. So That was a nice little bit of a bull flag pullback entry there. Once this big green candle popped, that was kind of the trigger for me. If I would have taken that long trade, I would have waited for something like that and then taken that next leg up, which at that point was, you know, it's about a 6-7% move, but very quickly. I mean, that was a pretty good move. So it's just trending, following these, you know, these moving averages, pulling back. That's what I'm looking for on those. Next target on this guy, it's right at some support, or excuse me, resistance here. So 75, 90, 8,000 is kind of your 76, excuse me, is your next target up, which it's almost there. Would make sense to see a little bit of a breather here. Same approach as Dash, a little bit extended near term. Probably won't chase it here until I get a secondary consolidation or a little bit of a base, just because then that gives me some levels of support to look at as a potential stop loss point in case it fails to push higher. So, but if I was in it, I mean, nothing to do. It's just trending higher. I would probably stay with it, but again, it is approaching that first major resistance here around that 7,600 onto the BTC pair. And this goes back quite a ways. If you look left, this goes back to, you know, early or late September. So it's a big level to be watching. All right, we'll move on. So XMR, again, I'm going to just say the same thing as I did on Dash there. Nothing really to do. Okay. GoChain. Let's go look at the GoChain. All right. So GoChain was pushing higher. I covered this one briefly in the video over the weekend. And what I liked about GoChain was this consolidation. At the time, it was forming this little consolidation after a good bounce off of that, right? It had seen a prior rally in December, went right to resistance, pulled back, stayed above the breakout point, started a rally, and then tightened up. Was ripe for a good breakout trade. Has broken out. Now it's clearing that bigger resistance on the daily time frame. Let's zoom out real quick here and go to the daily chart. And you can see this little consolidation popping right through on well above average volume. And so this one looks really good. It's in play. If we go here, what I'd be looking for is either a little bit of a pause above this line or a pullback that stays above this prior breakout point. So that's what I'd like to see as a, you know, secondary entry. But this one's going. That was probably a good breakout entry here if you wanted to catch it. Otherwise, a throwback to that point would be ideal. So what I'll do is I'm going to put an alert here at the 230 level. If it breaches that, then I may look at it there. Alternatively, a little bit of a pause. It just depends on your time frame. So if you're looking at it here, let's say you really wanted to jump on it here, then the question is always, well, where do you put your stop, right? If you're wrong, how will you know you're wrong? And the stop is kind of a ways down, right? So, I mean, a logical stop, right? If you're wrong, I mean, at the soonest you would have to do it would be the daily low, and that's good 21% down. That's a lot, meaning, you know, just to make it worth your while, you generally want at least a 2-to-1 ratio. This guy's got to run another 30-40% from here to justify that wide of a stop. And so that's why, for me, I'd rather just wait for a tighter entry, because then if I get a pullback to, say, here, my stop doesn't have to be that wide. Now I can live with a 10 or 15% stop, and then, you know, a 20% move more than justifies the entry there. So it's all about the risk reward there. That's how I would do it. That's why I wouldn't necessarily chase it. Doesn't mean it doesn't keep going. It's just my entry would be late here versus versus a closer down entry, just because of normal volatility would give you a little bit of a drawdown. But Go is looking good. If you caught that on the breakout, congrats. That's looking pretty nice here. As far as targets go, I mean, this is a solid breakout. You could almost call this like a little, you know, kind of cup and handle-ish setup here. Let me look at this. So next target up, it's entering this zone back here. So next major target is between here and here. So you're talking about 320, so about 100 sats up, if we can go. So 27%, maybe 30%. Not too shabby. Let's see if it goes. All right, so Go. I put an alert there. Let me see. I'm going to say target entry range is going to be around, you know, 220 to 240 or so. All right. Let's see here. What else is looking good here? Let's see. ETH was on the list. How's ETH looking? It did break out from that little range that it was sitting tight. I think it still looks great. This was what I was watching here over the weekend. I posted it on the Slack group, and some of the guys on the Slack group were also looking at the same setup, liking this. And there was a couple ways you could have looked at it. You could have made it a little bit tighter here, or you could have said when it broke this level. In any case, it's marching along higher. It's looking pretty good. There was this big outside bar in the last 4-hour candle with high volume, but it's trending. The moving averages are starting to head up. They're positively correlated. So all in all, I'm still thinking ETH sees between 19.23 and 19.6, right? So that's kind of the target zone for this guy here. Oops, not that guy. And personally, any pullbacks to this level here are probably still, tradable for me if I were not in this. So target buy zone would be, 184 to maybe, 186. Very clear stop level. If it pulls back and breaks that 181 level, this is the BTC pair, by the way, not the USD. If it breaks 181, then that looks like a failed breakout. I certainly would not write it out much further than that if it were me. So that's the way I'm looking at it. So ETH target entry, if you're not on it already, I'd probably go with like a 184 to 186, and your target profit or T1 is 192, and then 196 is what I'm looking for. Now, from a percentage basis, that's not a lot. It's a small, but considering it's a big cap name, that would just help the alts all around in terms of, the BTC dominance, right? So we looked at that BTC dominance here a couple of videos ago. And if you go to BTC dominance, you're seeing it spike down here a little bit, as even though price is going up, you're seeing it spike down a little bit as the alts are outperforming. And that's great, right? If you're trading alts, that's what you want to see. You want to see this and then the quick spike, because that means money's rotating out of BTC into the alts as far as market cap goes, but that's basically translating to token price there. So, and again, when the big cap names are having those big moves, that's what happens here, right? The biggest influences on this chart are going to be XRP, ETH, Bitcoin Cash, those type of names. They're going to have the most weight. And so we're seeing those names rally right now, and that's what's driving this BTC dominance down, which, all around, good for the alts, right? So that's ETH. Let's look at ETH real quick on the USD side. ETH USD, what's going on here? Nice little steady trend. Similar shakeout reversal that it had for Bitcoin. Not quite as sideways looking, but you had that shakeout, quick pop higher right over that 130 level. And since then, just trending higher, hitting that 142 level, right up into some near-term support, prior support, now resistance. So this is interesting to see this right here. Can it blast through that? If it hits above that 150, then you're looking at around 155 as your next major target. And above that, about 160, 159. So that lines up pretty well. This would be a good place to see a little bit of a breather, but the trend is your friend. It's, nice little steady trend here following the moving averages. So we'll see how that one goes. On a pullback, around 130 to 136 or so is the first support level. So if it does decide to pause, that would be a good place to look at it here for a potential move higher. So that's what I'm looking at on the USD side of ETH. USD, I'm going to say, I'll just call it 135. All right. Excelente. Let's see what's next here. Welcome, everybody. If you're just joining, what I'm doing here is I'm going through a list of names just to see what the markets are doing. I'm starting with this trending list here, by the way. So if you're wondering where these names are coming from, I'm just going down in order. I've got a separate sheet here that I'm keeping notes on. Key support levels, target entry points, stop loss levels, target profit levels. So I'm just going to jot some notes down and kind of narrow it down to what are the better setups that I'm watching. Then we'll kind of circle back at the end and see some of the cleaner names here. So I'm just going through this about as quickly as I can. I want to leave some time for any names or setups that you guys are liking that you want to look at here. BCH, and of course we're starting with all the strong names here for, and if you didn't know, the trending name is sorted by the 4-hour BMI, and so naturally you're going to get some of the shorter term stronger names here first, and as we go towards the low part, near term they may not be as strong, but doesn't necessarily mean they're bad, because they could be pulling back or something and setting up. So that's what I'm going to be watching there. BCH here, let's see, Bitcoin Cash. Feels extended to me. I think it needs a little bit more of a breather. It's already had a good run. If I wasn't in this now, I personally wouldn't be trading it. The last breakout was here a couple days back, right when it gave you this little bull flag on the 4-hour, and then it had a good rally. This is what I was posting here on the last video I did, and we saw that rally continue higher. Gives you second legs up, but you are starting to see a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit of a RSI divergence. Certainly on the MACD histogram, you're seeing more of a divergence there. On the 4-hour chart, just signifying that maybe it needs more of a breather, a little bit of a consolidation. If you go to the daily chart here, let me go to a different chart here. I'll go to BCH on Coinbase. That's just because Binance finally changed their ticker symbol, so you lose a little bit of the history there. They were BCH ABC prior. But if you go to the higher time frames here on, let me clear this guy out. You know, it could continue to just have that quick spike higher, but at that point it starts to look a little bit parabolic near term, right? On this daily chart going extended, 0.33, excuse me, is where I'd be looking for a big resistance level pause at that point. Near term, I think the better setup would be if it does pull back before that and consolidate a little bit, let that RSI cool off on that 4-hour chart, because then that would give it some more, you know, technical room, if you will, before it gets very extended again, and that'll give it some legs to push through that resistance level at that 0.033. So, but near term, I mean, the trend is your friend, rallying, pulling back, another rally, pull back, and so these little pauses so far have been healthy for BCH here, and that's really the next target. If I were in it, I mean, probably wouldn't do a whole lot until you started to see the big reversal, but near term, first target 0.033. And then after that, we'll see how it breaks out on that daily chart. That'd be a big breakout on the daily chart there. But pullback levels, man, it's already had several legs up. So ideally, the better setup would be if it could just kind of pause around here and sit tight for a couple of days. If it did pull back stronger, right, and give you a deeper leg down, then 382 puts you right here on that 0.029. So you'd be looking at, you'd be looking at, you know, down to here, and then below that, down to there, which lines up with these prior bases. So that could be the next, you know, a good secondary level. But strong name, certainly outperforming near term, and has been the case for the last few days. How's it looking on the USD side? BCH USD looks like it just broke out above that 226 level. And that was a nice breakout after a consolidation here. So that lines up with the breakout we saw in Bitcoin here. So you can see that this prior resistance back here. It paused just below that here for several 4-hour candles, about a day and a half, and then boom, pops right through. Pulling back right now. If you're trading it from the USD side, you know, you like that little bit of a breakout, maybe pulls back, holds above the line, 225, and then gets going again, which would line up with a Bitcoin price pushing over that 7,600 level. And so if Bitcoin decides to pop over 7,600 level, could carry this one higher. So BCH, I'm going to like it from the USD side more. Let me see here, 225 is kind of that first support level. Below that, if it broke, say, 215 or so, that would be the max that I would give it here. And then target on the way up, about 245 is your next target, and then you got a major wall around 260. Does it get that high? I don't know. I think it needs a little bit more of a pullback first. 250, 260, all right. Okay. RAN, let's see what's up with that. RAN BTC here. Interesting little setup here on the 4-hour chart. Now, this is a little bit more wide and loose, smaller cap name, but just like GoChain was looking the other day, this has a very similar signature. You had this strong rally higher, a pause, a little bit of a pullback, finally getting going, pulling back here a little bit right now. So this is a good breakout watch at 520. That holding above that on the 4-hour would be ideal. On a pullback, as long as it holds above this level, it's in play. So holding above 480, 490. If it starts to dip below that, this quickly starts to look like a small double top. I would not be interested in it at that point. So I'm going to say, you know, be either on a pullback, 480 to 490 is what I want to see hold, or breakout point 520 if it breaks out above that. And then let's see here, your first target on this guy. Let me zoom out here. Let me clear this old line here. I don't know what that was for. But there's a very clear level here. 610. That's the level I'd be watching. That's a big target there. Then between here and there, let's do a fib bounce. 618 puts you at 560 basically. 580. So that's what I'm looking at on this guy, RAN. I don't even know what the market cap is of RAN. Anybody know? RAN market cap. So breakout trade here, breakout setup, or a pullback entry here. First target 560, then 580, then 610. That's the way I'm going to mark that guy up. How much of a percentage move is that? Let's see. That's 8%, 10, and then 17. So, not too shabby. Not too shabby here. Let's see here. If we pull back, that's only a 1-to-1 there. That's a 1.5. That gives you about a 2.2, assuming you use that as your stop level. Now, if you enter here, then you can have a much tighter stop. Then you're talking a 3-to-1 ratio just to get to the first target at 550. Much better. I'm going to just drop an alert there. Looking for a pullback down to around that 240, or excuse me, 490. Okay, let's keep moving here. What's up, Crypto Caveman? Thanks for joining, my friend. What else we got? BNB. You guys want to look at BNB? We'll certainly add that to the list here. I'm only on number 8. We're gonna keep going, but yeah, I've got a few more names on the list here: Neo, Aeon, Theta, Bitcoin Cash SV, Zcash, EOS. I'll skip some of the smaller cap names. We'll look at Litecoin, Mana, Cardano, Bat Waves, Raven, XRP, BNB, and anything else that we can take a look at here. So thanks for being here. This is a market scan. What I'm doing, if you're just joining late, I'm going through a bunch of names that are on the watch list, on the trending names list here, and just simply going through my thought process out loud with you guys. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I don't do a full market scan like every day or several times a day. There's just no way to watch the charts that often, especially if you're working full time. I know a lot of you guys are busy with other things and working and all that. And so what I do though is, you know, once or twice a week, I'll do kind of a deep look, and I'll go through the charts this way. I'll start with what's strongest, what's moving, because I always want to focus on the names in play first. And then I'll outline key support resistance levels, and then I'll set alerts, and then I'll kind of make some notes. You know, what's the setup? Is it a breakout trade, a pullback trade, a trend following trade, a reversal trade? Is it a pattern that I'm watching, that sort of thing? And then I'll just kind of narrow it down, right, to a handful of names that I'm really going to keep an eye on and execute a trade on if I get a hit. So that's just my thought process. So if you're wondering what I'm looking at here, where I'm getting these names, why I'm looking at certain levels, that is why. I'm just kind of doing my market scan, but I figured I would do it out, you know, kind of out loud with you guys on the stream. And feel free to ask any questions and throw out any names that you guys want to look at here as well. So, all right, let's go to the next one here. So we had Bitcoin Cash, Ren, Neo. Now Neo has already been on my radar for some time. It was one of the better looking names here, and it finally broke out. And this is what I was watching on Neo. So this is Neo BTC. I've already got the line marked in the chart, but I was, now granted it's coming off of a low, but it did have a little bit of a kind of cup and handle signature to it. You can see this trend line, and that was really the level to be watching, was a break above that trend line, which we saw happen over the weekend. On this kind of a setup, I generally don't like to chase it at the breakout point. To me, that's a late entry. What I like to do instead is I look for the handle to be taken out. So the entry would have been here, or at the most right here after this little tight consolidation when it starts to pop higher. And that's the way I like to trade those, because then you get some wiggle room, right? Because what you do is your stop loss point now is this little zone back in here, or even right here. And so chasing it up here means you got to give it a lot of room to the downside versus getting into it around here. That gives you a much tighter stop, meaning when it finally does break out, you've got a good cushion, you've got a good risk-reward ratio at that point. And so if we did that, this is how I would have looked at it, right? I'd be looking at it here. Either you can do a stop here, which is a very tight 1.5% stop, or a stop here, which is around 3%. And then a simple 2-to-1 ratio means you got to get to about a 6% trade for that to be, within my personal rules, right? I got to go minimum 2-to-1 for the trade to be worthwhile. I think this one has room to run. Could probably get as far as 1360, and then up here around 1460, right? Those are kind of the big targets. If you got that high, you're talking this is almost a 3-to-1 trade at that point. That's only a 10% move, but very small downside here. So I like to take those setups here. But that's what I was looking for here. Now that it's done that, if you're not in this, what I'd be looking at would be a throwback entry right to the breakout point, which you just got on a couple candles ago, and it's starting to bounce off that point. So let's say you entered here, right? The most I would give it personally would be the low of that big impulse bar, meaning if it totally reversed and lost that low, that was the low where all that volume came in, that would just nullify that big breakout candle, and to me the trade would be done at that point. So that's how I would look at that personally. That's just my approach, right? But that was a nice little setup, pulling back, big pop, came in right back in. Looks like it wants to keep going here. If you look at the RSI, it's around 70 for an alt. That's not that high, has room to run. MACD's trending higher. Daily chart, RSI has plenty of room to run before it hits anywhere near oversold or overbought conditions. And so this is coming off of the back of a nice little bit of a pullback here. Daily chart looks like it wants to get going again. So from a swing trade, I think this one looks a little bit better. I think this is a good one to give some time, some wiggle room to run. But around 1200, call that is kind of my near-term stop level that I'd be watching on this guy. So Neo looking like it's just breaking out here. And I'm going to say first target on the BTC pair, let's call it 1350, and then 1450. Those are the big targets. 1350, 1450. If you do a measured move on this, assuming you're calling this a cup and handle, if you did a measured move on that, let's see where the target takes you. You got to take it from the breakout point. Oh, look at that. Almost perfectly to the first target at 1350. So it's a good target. That's what I'd be looking for on this guy right here. 1350 Neo. All right. 1250 to 1290 is the entry point. Okay. Stop loss 1200. Done. All right, moving on. Moving on. Let's see what we got. Aeon. There's a name from yesteryear. Smaller cap name coming up on the trending list for some reason here. A little bit of a base being built on this daily. Look at zoom out and holy moly, like this is just flat. A lot of churn coming in here. I'm always suspect when you see the big volume spike and all the churn coming in at the lows. Definitely suspect of that. But let's see if there's anything that this one offers here. Not a real clean setup here. Really the thing I'd be watching is potential breakout reversal here. So if it starts to pull back or it starts to break above this line, you could be seeing the beginning of a little bit of a reversal. Then you got a target here, and here's your first targets on the way up. That gives you about 10% to the first run, and then 25%, which is pretty good from a percentage basis, but you got to give it at least 8 or 9% to the downside as a potential risk. So that's a 1-to-1 trade, and then a 2.5. So it's actually not a bad trade if it breaks out above that level, if it can reach this first target around 990, 995 or so. That'd give you a 2.5 to 1 ratio with a 23% upside versus BTC. So I wouldn't complain about that one bit. So let me see here. I'm going to just mark it down real quick. Breakout setup. And my two targets would be, I would say, call it 890 and 990 with a maximum stop around 730. And your entry is really basically here, right? You're right around the breakout point. Okay, next guy here on the list, Theta. Theta, interesting. Okay, go look at the Theta token. Now this one did have a breakout, a little bit of a pullback, throwback entry. It's trying to recapture that level here again. And so if you really liked Theta, this is really your first big target up here. And so if you wanted to hold that, the way you would enter that, here's this how I would do it. I'd look at, say, an entry here with a maximum stop loss at the swing low that we just saw here a few days ago. And that would give it, that's a wide stop, about 11% versus Bitcoin, meaning I would have to take a smaller position to manage my risk if I took that wide of a stop. But, you know, even if it just takes a retest at this prior high, it's about a 1.5% risk return, meaning a 17% upside. But then if it actually breaks above that, you know, anywhere here in between would justify the trade for me, just because I'm looking for a 2-to-1 minimum. That would put you here, 22%. 3-to-1 takes you here, which is pretty close to that target. That's about a 33% move from this point. At that point, I'd start locking in some gains if it were me, and then see how it reacts going into that resistance level. So potential reversal. Again, this is more of a pullback entry at this point on the daily chart. So pullback entry on the daily time frame. And let me see, entry point is basically here, so about 1300 in and around there, with your max stop being, what is that, 1160? Yeah, I'll just call it 1160. T1 would be around the prior highs, 1500, maybe 1550, and then T2 is around 1750. Okay, let's see what else we got. Crypterium. How do you say that? Crypterium. Crypterium. One of the Tika names. Has been in pullback mode here for some time. For me, I'm looking at the higher time frames, just because on the lower time frames, this name is just small cap, so volatile. Certainly just too tough to trade from the lower time frames with any kind of clarity. So not one I look at from that perspective. This is more of a longer swing hold. But until it takes out that trend line, probably nothing for me to do on that guy there. Bitcoin Cash SV. Where's Polo? Where's Polo? Well, here it is on Bitfinex. Looks like it wants to break out here again after pulling back. It's been a nice trend for some time now. Here's the 4-hour chart. What is that? Up about 32%, right to that breakout point. Would make sense to see a little bit of a breather here, let things cool off a little bit, and then take out that resistance. That would be ideal. And the reason I say that is because what tends to happen is you get that, you know, if it's marching, and then all of a sudden you kind of get that quick spike higher. A lot of people will chase that saying, oh, it's a breakout, it's moving. But what is really happening is that just tends to be kind of the exhaustion move, if you will, kind of the climactic buying, and then you get a pullback after that. And so ideally, you'd rather just see that not happen at all. You'd rather see a little bit of a consolidation here at these levels or even a brief pullback here, let things kind of cool off. What that does is that resets some of the technicals, and then when it finally does break out, it has room to run at that point, right? As opposed to it being an exhaustion move, if you will. And that's on the lower time frames. The higher time frames, right? If you're looking at the daily chart, it has been marching steadily. There was a prior base. Let me zoom in here. There was a prior base back here. That was a good secondary entry point. You had this setup for about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. Was really tightening up, setting up on a little bit of an ascending triangle, and then boom, popping through the last few days. Volume is spiking here today, right around that resistance level. And so if this one closes in the red today, that's going to tell me that this has more to go in terms of pulling back. And so I'm not going to trade this one personally, but an ideal level would be the moving averages on a pullback there. All right, let's see here what else. Zcash. I'm going to quickly move through some of these here. Looking at Zcash, trying to form out a little bit of a bottom the last few days. If you go to the 4-hour chart, has been trending after taking out a little bit of a level there, moving up nicely, pulling right back to this moving average now. So those are the good pullback entries for a secondary leg higher. If you get anything in this zone, then I'd be looking for another leg up. And your first target is between here and there on the BTC pair. Call it 4,500 to 4,650, give or take. And so that's what I'm looking at on those guys. And how much of a move would that be? It's about 7% to 10% for the Zcash. So I'm going to say that's a good potential pullback. It makes you wonder what happens with Monero. If Monero starts to pull back in, does Zcash follow suit, or is there a rotation? So often you get a lot of these, these names that happen in groups, right? Pivx, Monero, Zcash, Dash. They tend to run together oftentimes. Not always, but a lot of times they do. So pullback entry, basically between here and 4,100, I'll call it. So I'll say 4,100 to 42, and your max stop, wouldn't give it much more than like 40.50 or so. That would be me. And then first target 4,500, and then 46.50 would be my next targets. Not a bad little percentage move here. Okay, let's keep going. Question on there: do you think BTC should be a sell right now? So if you just joined, actually, that's a good time to take a pause, go back to BTC, see what's going on here. Two ways that I'm looking at this. The daily chart looks really bullish, looks ready to pop. Personally, I think it's going to break out over 7,600. The question is, what happens after that, right? Does it hold? Is it a head fake and then starts to roll over again? Or is it finally start holding above 7,600, and then we get the march to 8K and 9K and so forth? On the shorter time frames, 7,600 was my target. So from the quick trade that I was in here, this was the margin side of things. I took the margin off here and just banked it. What I'm doing though is watching this, because this is looking pretty bullish here, but I'm going to be curious to see how it acts if it pops over that 7,600. Now I'm still holding a core long in terms of just maintaining a long exposure to it, but I'm not on any leverage right now, just because I've hit my target. I'm thinking it, anything can happen here. The trend is your friend. It's still moving higher. You could have a pretty decent short squeeze from here, so it's just hard to say. Do you think it's a sell right now? I don't think it's a sell per se. Is it a, tighten the stop move? Is it a take profit move? It just depends on what your time frame is and where you got in, right? If you just started to accumulate here, and here, right? Did it meet your objectives? Is it worth holding for a longer time frame? I think from the daily chart perspective, it's not a sell to me. It's just a watch here because it's right at resistance. But if it pops through, you can have a pretty decent short squeeze. On a pullback, I'd like to see it break below that 40, that 74.50, maybe 7,400. This would give it a nice little reprieve, and then I'd like to see it pop right back above there. No, you haven't missed EOS. Actually, that's the next one on the list. I just finished Zcash, so we'll do EOS next. But those are my thoughts on BTC. It still looks good all around. I mean, it looks favorable. The trend is strong here on the short-term time frames. The daily chart, I think, is more of the bigger picture to be watching right now because it's just kind of gone sideways, but it looks like it wants to reverse here. I don't use a lot of leverage, so I'm not like on BitMEX doing 50x or anything stupid like that. I just use small leverage 2 to 5 times at most, and I usually only use it for the bigger cap names, you know, Bitcoin, ETH, something where, you know, if it moves 6 or 7%, you know, that's decent. But if it's on leverage to even 2x or 3x, 6 to 7% is a big move, right? So, but I watch those closely. I definitely just don't blindly let it run. And on the small cap, on the alts and all that, I don't use it at all. I just run with the trades they give you, because I mean, you're generally going to get a double-digit % on a lot of those small caps anyway. So I don't feel the need to take on that much of a risk. So that's BTC here. The trading strategy did go long on that 4-hour chart. It's not long on the daily, and it won't go long on the daily until it gets back over that, you know, 8,000 mark, just because that's a trend following strategy and it takes the higher time frame. So the daily chart here, for example, the trading bot, I don't expect will go long if price continues to rally until we start to see over 8K. 4-hour chart, you know, obviously that's a shorter term time frame, so the trading bot's going to move around with that. Yeah, we'll come back to some of the bigger cap names. So let me run through the list. ETH was the 1, 2, 3. It was the 4th one I did other than Bitcoin, so I guess the 5th one. And we'll come back to that one here. I'm still liking it. I think it looks pretty good, but we'll certainly circle back here. ETH is looking good. NEO's looking good there. Some of these smaller caps look good if you can keep a tight stop on some of those. Zcash wasn't bad. Let's go look at EOS. EOS BTC here. So looking at EOS. Oh, nice. Looks like it wants to push through. It's just now edging out. Let's go to the 4-hour time frame. It's just now edging out above this little bit of a resistance level here. You can see that that candle there was associated with some pretty good volume on the buy side, and so that looks positive there. That's a good candle there. If I were on a trade, that's where I would put my stop, right here around this level, just because that's the breakout. That's what's taken out this trend line. Even if it pulls back, you don't want to see it violate that point, because if it does, then all of these buyers here basically lost, right? They were wrong. And so you're just going to want to trade with the trend in that point. But this one's looking pretty good. It looks like it wants to get going. EOS looks like it's about to pop here. That looks nice. Moving averages are trending higher. So any throwbacks to around here would be ideal, and that gets you really close to the support level. But even entering it here wouldn't be too bad for me, just because I could manage that risk there. That's a nice little consolidation. So that looks good. Where are the next targets? Look at some key levels here. I'm going to go back to the daily chart and see how it's looking from that perspective here. Let me clear some of this out real quick. Take out some of that. You can see the daily chart just now starting to curl higher on the moving averages, starting to take out some near-term resistance here. So definitely within range. And then your next targets, very short-term targets probably here, but I'd be looking more at this as your big target on the way up. And so what are we looking at there? If I entered here, the way I would trade that is on the daily chart, obviously. The way I would trade that here is probably the 10 or the 22 would be my max. That's a tight stop. That's only a 2 to 3% on the daily. And first target's not even worth looking at. It's only a 1-to-1 ratio, so I'd be looking at more here. 2-to-1 gets you at around 3,900 on the BTC pair, and then 4,000. So those are my two targets on the upside. If it continued higher, I'd look at it here, and then I'd look at it here as potential T1 and T2 with the max stop there. So let me make some notes there. EOS entry, you know, anywhere here, 3,700 down to around 3,650 or so would be ideal. And then max stop loss that I would use personally would be the low of that last couple of days, maybe 35.80 or so, give or take. T1, it'd have to get to 3,900 to make it worthwhile, and then 4,000. let's look at it from the USD side here real quick. EOS. Very similar chart too. Look at, you get that kind of same setup we're seeing on a lot of these names. You can call it kind of inverse head and shoulder type of thing. Right at the neckline right now, it's starting to edge out. In theory, you can say it's already broken out, right? The neckline has more of a slant to it, so it already broke out technically. So this is kind of your entry zone, right? If you were trading on a breakout, you'd be looking at it either between $2.68 to around $2.82, in and around there. And then from there, there's a couple of ways to do targets on this one. Obviously, the easy ones are just pure horizontal price resistance. That's kind of my favorite target generally. So here and then here, right? So $3.30, $3.60 would be the targets. If you did a measured move, you go from the depth of the pattern, assuming that's what you're calling this. If you're saying, hey, this is a head and shoulder pattern, you take that to the neckline, then you extrapolate that out from the breakout point, right? And then you extend that out, and look at that. Lines up beautifully with that 330 target. And so that's how I'd be trading that, is, you know, higher time frame. And of course, I mean, what tends to happen, you get some front running, you know, there's that game theory. If everyone's looking at 330, do you get out at 220, at 225? Do you just start taking the stops tight, let it run, because it could keep going, right? So that's how that's where the whole trading psychology comes in, and that's what makes it challenging, in my opinion. It's not so much can you read the charts and can you identify key support resistance levels. You know, I can certainly teach you guys how to do that, but the actual decision making, do you get out too early, too late, you know, all the difficulties in trading, that's what makes trading difficult, right? And people tend to beat themselves up way too much, myself included. Oh, I got out too early. Oh, I got out too late. I should have just taken the profits when I had it. And oh, I gave back too much. And then it takes off again, right? And all the mind games that happen. That's the challenge. That's the part that just really takes a lot of time and experience. Takes, you know, journaling and looking back at your trades to really start to get better at that. And that's really tough to teach, just because you kind of have to live that out your own. But EOS, I'm liking EOS there. Looking pretty good on the USD side here, just to kind of recap. Right at the breakout points, right? Entries, ideal entries would have been, you know, between 268 and call it 280 with your stop loss. I mean, if you're trading this pattern, your stop loss has to be the, you know, the swing low basically of that, because what tends to happen is if this is what you're trading this pattern, then obviously if it decides to just turn tail here and pull back, a dip below this right shoulder, if you will, invalidates your thesis, right? Now you're saying, okay, I was trading this based off an inverse head and shoulder. It broke below that. Clearly that was not the right shoulder. So then your trade is done, right? So you'd have to give it that much. Now the question is giving it that much room worth your trade, right? So if you look at that, that's a pretty wide stop. This would mean you're only at a 1.5% risk reward, but then if it hits your secondary target, you're at 2.5, and in my book, that's worth my while. So not bad all around. EOS is looking pretty interesting. I don't have any fundamental news. I know, hey Herman, do you have any news on this? What would be driving this potentially? Is there any good stuff, or is it just purely alts trying to reverse after a nice little beatdown they've had for the last year? I'm thinking it's the latter personally. I'm seeing a lot of these moving together with a similar pattern here. All right. Let me see. I'm going to start to move a little quickly here. We had Zcoin on the list. I'll probably skip that. Question on here. I want to give the try for a month. After paying 28, can I cancel? Yeah. So what you can do is, if you just want to try it for 1 month, what you do is you sign up. You go to this manage subscription there. If you do that, you can just quickly say non-renewing, and then it won't auto-renew. Obviously, you'll still get your full month, and then it'll cancel after your subscription expires. And if you change your mind, you can always say keep it going, right? So cancel the non-renewing or whatever. So yeah, feel free to give it a shot. I think it's a pretty good deal for 28 bucks. Obviously, you don't have to pay anything. There's some stuff you get for free. If you just go to the site, you get like the top few trending names. There's a few videos that you can get access to here for free as well. So if you go to the education tab, feel free to just kind of peruse it, check it out. But if you want the full access, if you want to get the emails when this thing changes, that sort of thing, that's for subscribers as well as this bot status page. You got to get a subscription for that. Okay, let's see what else we got going on here. So I'll do a few more, and I'm going to get to your guys' list here, okay? I'm going to skip Zcoin. Let me just look at the chart real quick. Just look at it real quick. Zcoin showing some big volume spike off the low today. Don't know what's associating with that, but it's a lot of volume there. Okay. Riff. I don't know. Do we want to look at Riff? Yeah. We'll pass on that. Pivx was another smaller cap name. Just too wide and loose for me. Ethereum Classic looks like it might finally be pulling back. Yeah. Seen some distribution there. If you go to that 4-hour view, a lot of volume at the top trying to pull in. We'll see. It's been strong for a while. Keeper Network. Eesh, not on that exchange. KNC on BTC here. A little bit of a breakout. Coming off the lows though, man. This one's, look how choppy that got. Wow. This just looks like a counter trend trade. That's all. Looks like a bounce trade. It's already at the 50% retracement. Maybe it gets to 618. Just not very clean. How's it look on the daily? Maybe. Had a big double top here, pulling back. Has work to do. That's a tough one. Yeah, Pivx is way too dangerous. Yeah, and so I always advocate using stops, but there are times when I'm trading those wide and loose names where I won't use stops, like hard-coded stops. What I'll do is instead I'll put alerts. And so if I see a wick go through the alert, then I'll make a decision at that point. But it won't actually wick me out, because you get those wicks and they take off and keep going. And there's times where, you know, I'm trading those. I won't use stops, like hard-coded stops, but that comes with its risks. If you get a Matic candle, then it's good night. You wake up the next day wrecked. Litecoin. Let's go look at Litecoin. Litecoin, all right, Litecoin. A little bit of a higher low, higher high starting to form here on the daily. Let's zoom into that 4-hour view. Starting to edge out here a little bit. Trying to play catch up along with some of these other names here. 5,900 on the BTC pair. And then 60, call it 6150 on the next upside target. I like to trade Litecoin from the USD side, so let's go look at that guy there. Expecting a big launch up, okay. After the launch and then probably a dump. Yeah, that's generally how it goes, right? We'll go check it out. I'm going to make some notes here. I'm seeing some more names coming in. VChain, we'll look at that one if we have some time. Nexo, maybe. XRP's on the list. We will look at that one. And okay. Litecoin's been a nice little steady charge. And again, this is the same setup that Bitcoin had, right? It had that pullback and then the pop right above. And, you know, getting above that $41 level was kind of that signal. It's only run up to about $45 right now. First target is right around there, $46. That lines up with BTC 7600. So if it can pop through, maybe Litecoin breaks over that $46 level. Then above that, next major target's 49. It's got so much room, so much to go. It's just had such a big pullback. Then 55, and so could really offer some decent counter trend trades. Again, that's counter trend trade because this is clearly not trading with the trend, right? The trend, macro trend, at least for the last several months, is clearly down, as is most of these names, but you're starting to see some potential lows being formed here near term, so not too shabby. I'm liking Litecoin here. It's not too bad. If it pulls back to around 43 and change, that'd be a level I'm going to watch for. Other than that, if it sits tight in this range and then pops above 46, that'd be a level to watch for there as well. and that could correspond with a Bitcoin breakout. Let's go back to Litecoin BTC, because it is slightly outperforming Bitcoin on the way up. Looks like it's trying to get going here again today, so not too shabby. If I did, let's say an entry in and around there, a tight stop would be here. That's less than 2%. And then you're looking at, you know, single digits, not a huge percentage move versus Bitcoin. There's probably better trading setups out there, but you know, it's a relatively low risk trade versus Bitcoin here, just because it's offers such a tight stop. So something you could probably do, I would maybe do with margin on, but yeah, not too shabby. I think ETH looks better personally. Let's see here, Bitcoin. So let's look at DecentraLand. That one's been running nicely, setting up a little bit of a pause. I think it looks more of a cup and handle to me. Could quickly turn into a double top if it loses this level. So here's what we're watching, right? You had this run up, got pretty spiky here, pulling back, arguably forming a little bit of a cup. Now, the thing with this setup here is this also has the potential to form into a double top, right? So you don't want to see the handle come too deep. If this starts to really, you know, drift lower and you get that spike, then it looks double toppy at that point. So you don't generally want to see the handle get further than halfway, 618 at the most. So if we did that, all right, 618 is here, but again, that looks pretty deep. So ideally, you want that handle to stay above this if that's going to be a secondary base that's setting up right now. And so, you know, in and around here is where you want to see that form, kind of this consolidation pulling back. And the volume looks okay so far. It's coming down on lower volume. How's the RSI look? Let's go take a look at that. RSI has had plenty of time to cool off, and so not too bad. A good potential breakout setup after this run up that it's had. That 500 sat level has been the near-term resistance, so I've been watching this one here closely, and I've noticed that 500 sats rallied and rallied again. Getting above that, things look pretty positive. I think it goes on another leg. If you do a measured move on this, assuming it's a cup and handle, if you do a measured move on that, that takes you to around 570 to 580, give or take. Does that line up with anything significant here? Prior, oh, that's way too high. This has so much room to run if it gets going. So prior support resistance here is about 570. So yeah, it's pretty close. And then above that there. So those are the two targets. If it can break out. So 580, and then above that, way up here. A lot of room up there. So we'll see. Mana. All right. So I'm going to say that's a breakout trade. Potential cup and handle being formed. And 500 is really your key level to be watching. That 500 sat. First target on the way up is 580, and then 700, who knows. Okay. Mana. All right. Next one on the list, Cardano. Looking at Cardano here. I had an alert back in here. You can probably see it on the screen, but I was watching this level. Obviously, that didn't happen. It didn't break out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this alert down here and see if we get a pullback to this guy right here, where it's maybe forming a base above now, right? It was forming this little reversal potential, and now it's popping above. If it pulls back, that's ideal. If it just sits tight in this range and then gets going again, that's fine too. If I were entering here, just at the current price, the most that I would give it would be, you know, this little swing low back here around 460. And your first target would have to be around there. It's about almost a 2-to-1, not quite. And then above that, about 530 to 550, call it, give or take. And then that would be a much stronger trade. Looking at it from the USD side, looks much better here, much cleaner. You got a very clear range that was built, finally breaks out. Looks like it's right at the next resistance level. And then you've got multiple levels to be watching above that. Major one here, and here's probably the two biggies. There's a little minor level there. But looking pretty good. Has some room to run. Big resistance way up here around that 45-cent mark. But first things first, right? First target first. So not too shabby. If you do see a pullback in BTC, then I'd be watching some of these for potential throwbacks to those breakout points. See if they can bounce off of those levels. So I'm going to say ADA from the USD side. 0.035 would be my ideal. And then max at this point, you could probably just use not much below that, so like 33.5 or something. And then above that, 0.039. First target, 0.041. Second target. BAT, basic attention. This one looks weak. From the BTC pair, this looks like it's about to break. Had this rally. If it quickly reverses off of this level, this is a good maybe potential shakeout reversal setup. Meaning, if you get a big spike, takes out the stops, and then it quickly recovers, that's very positive generally. But right now it looks weak, and so until it can start to hold above 20, call it 25, 26 basically, 25.90, 26, then it looks much stronger. But for now, it looks very vulnerable. So I'd wait for that shakeout, see how it does after that, personally. Waves. Waves, again, a little bit of a failed breakout. Look at that. It was setting up, rallied, and then just started to roll over. It's still above the prior daily breakout point. If you look at the daily chart here, it had this breakout back here. But there's some big divergences showing up here. Look at this. Rallied higher. Can't confirm on the RSI or the MACD. Just not positive all around, but this could be the throwback. Maybe it consolidates around here. As long as it stays above this level, probably okay. Maybe for a dip entry if you like waves here. That's the level to be watching though. That 1100 level on the BTC pair. NXS. Nexus. Oh man, there's a name from yesteryear. Nexus. Last few days holding a little bit of a low down in here. And these are high percentage movers when they get going, but they're so wicky, but yeah, if it pops even just a little bit here, I mean, you're talking a very quick 20%, 15, 20% just to the top of this little range back in here. And your support level is very clear, so if you like it, I mean, you know where the support is. Much below 2340. Even 2300 if you want to give it wiggle room, much below that, and it just not looking good. Just because the broader trend is still downward, so you're fighting the trend here. At this point, you'd be betting on a counter trend rally, right? You're looking for a reversal from this point. Hasn't confirmed yet, but the potential setup is there. Raven. Let's see what we got on Raven. Raven looks vulnerable. There's a big base being set up right here. It's trying to hold that level, just rallies, pulls back, but at what point does that support level give way and then it makes a new lower low? Now the fact that alts are moving a little bit versus Bitcoin gives it some potential here, especially right at support. It's usually not a bad thing to buy right at support if you like it, right? If there's something you're interested in, just because, you know, the support level is clear, so you don't got to give it much room. And if it does take off, right, you've got a lot of upside from here. So the potential is there, but purely looking at the charts, I'm not going to say this is exactly a bullish looking chart other than the fact that it's sitting right at support. So maybe it's still holding. That's what I'd be watching now. If it holds above 30, just call it 340. That looks pretty good. If it starts to break out of that range and hold above 340. Because then this support starts to look much stronger at that point. All right, that was Raven. Bat Waves XRP. Nice big green candle today on XRP, still pushing higher. I'd probably, when something's moving that strongly, I gotta zoom into the lower time frames. Looking at the 1 hour chart. Now this popped. There's some news on XRP futures on Binance and other things. The question is always, is this an organic move or is this just a quick reaction? People start selling the news. Is it so typical? And the question, the answer is going to be on how this reacts on a pullback, right? If it starts to pull back on lower volume and then takes off again, those are usually pretty nice entries. And what I look for on the shorter time frames when something is moving that strongly, 10 EMA and then the 22 EMA on the 1 hour. So looking at, a quick pullback. And when I'm trading something on the 1 hour, it's usually a quick trade. I'm looking for more of a scalp, quick in and out. If I'm looking at the higher time frames, say I want to hold this, I think this is the beginning of a bigger move, then I'm just going to wait, right? I'd be waiting on the 4 hour to either give me a bull flag or something, right? Give me 3 or 4 or 5 candles where it just sits tight and then sets up for another rally. I mean, the 4 hour RSI is pushing 83 here. It's extended. The 10 EMA on the 4 hours way down here still at the prior breakout point. So it's, near term, it's just very extended. Could it keep going? Yeah, of course. But from a risk reward perspective, it's just not something I will generally chase. Now on the 1 hour, like I said, maybe, but if you get a little bit of a pause, pullback, let the moving averages catch up, that'd be ideal. That's kind of something I'm looking for. So what I'm going to do this here is let me go to the 1 hour. I'm going to drop some alerts here. I want to know on this moving average on the 1 hour, if it crosses below that, let me know. And then if we get a price break and it really breaks down, I want to see 27.70 or so. I want to know if it hits that. From there, I'll look at it, see if it's setting out for a potential secondary leg. Until then, just going to wait and see. XRP BNB. Nice. Little cup and handle-ish forming here after this pullback, rallying. Tried to get out above this range, pulling right back. I would say it's a little bit of a breakout setup here. The early entry was down in here when it finally popped above that. It's pulled right back, so it's not too bad here. Not too shabby. Because above this level here, then you've got room to run. There's a little bit of a gap until you get there. So how much of a run is that? It's about that's not a whole lot. Versus Bitcoin, that's only a 4% run. Now granted, on the downside, you don't got to give it a lot of room either. So it gives you somewhat of a tight stop. 2% down, 4% up. That's still a 2-to-1 trade. Then above that, around here, it's about a 6% trade. So, could be forming a bottom, could be starting to outperform Bitcoin on the higher time frames. Longer term chart, not too pretty. Maybe a double bottom on the daily chart starting to form here. Or the weekly chart, granted. Yeah, maybe double bottom on the weekly. Maybe. Got this guy here, this guy here. But you can see the trend here. It's certainly not favorable. Still trending below all the moving averages. The moving averages are trending down. Volume's not really there. Maybe for a quick trade on this time frame, that looks good. But bigger time frames still has work to do. All right. We're coming down to the last few here. So if you want to look at a few more, we certainly can. And then what I'll do is I'll circle back very quickly, see what some of the better ones are. VChain, all right. This one's not too bad, actually. You can say this is a descending triangle. I would not argue with that. But the setup here is really, can it break above that trend line? One could argue it probably already has. And on horizontal price, this little zone here, so around 83 sats. Let's go look at it from the USD side. VChain. That's your level right there. 0.058 or 0.0058 is kind of the breakout points. Maybe setting up, pulling back. So, yeah, not too shabby. I mean, near term it's been trending, but you know, from the USD side, so many of these have that same setup, right? There was the shakeout and then the quick reversal, and then it's just kind of been making higher highs and higher lows since then. And it's coming right up to this resistance level, 0.058, just like BTC. And so we'll see. This one's not too shabby. We'll see if it can take out that level there. If it does on the daily time frame, that'd be much stronger. And then above that, your next target is right here. So has room to run. About 10%. Not too shabby. 10%, not too bad. I'll take 10%. It's okay. It's not too bad. Let's see here. VChain. I think we looked at all of them. What was the other one? Link? Is Link finally done pulling back? Man, Link. Maybe. The last few candles look positive. Some good volume on that reversal right there. Coming off of the lows. Finally taking out some little bit of a resistance here. So not too shabby. If you like Link BTC, I'll look at it from the USD side as well. But if you like Link BTC, a couple ways to play this, right? Super tight stop would basically be at the swing low of the last 1 or 2 candles. It's about 2.5%. And then your first target is this right here. So that gives you about a 2.21 ratio, risk-reward ratio, 2.5% risk, about 5% upside. And then if you wanted to give it a wide stop, most I would give it would be the swing low here where the big volume came in. It's about 4.5%. But at that point, you know, I'd be holding out for a bigger swing, right? You're looking for something like that. It's like a 12, 15% swinger, which, you know, this is Link. Link has been known to do that, so maybe. Certainly volume's coming in here near term, so I wouldn't be against it. But again, broader trend, just keep that in mind. This is a counter trend setup. This is not a trend following trade. This is not a breakout trade. This is maybe you're going to get a counter trend rally after a pretty big pullback. That's what you just have to keep that in mind. And generally speaking, counter trend trades are much higher risk, much lower probability than when you're trading with the trend after something's strong, you're trading a breakout or secondary entry, right? Those are much stronger just because the momentum's already there. Strength begets strength. But not to say that I don't take counter trend trades. I certainly do as well. They're just not as nice or as lower risk as, say, the trend following trades, right? When you're riding this wave up, right, looking for those pauses and pullbacks, this is much better, cleaner, higher probability than when you're betting on, hey, this is going to bounce off the lows here. So got to just keep that in mind. Link. All right. Let me scroll through the list here. Let's go back to BTC here. How's BTC looking? BTC, I'm still looking all right. Still looking all right. So very near term, first support levels around that $7,200 range, 72 to 73. And then below that, if it loses at 7,100, that was a key pivot point. It's going to look negative personally, but I guess if you're really trading this pattern, the max you want to see it go is 6,900. That's your swing low. I personally wouldn't give it that much room, but 7,600 that's the key level to be watching on the way up. Holding above that, and then 7,800 is your next two upside targets. And then above that, right, you're talking 8Ks, and things look pretty nice at that point. 8,500s is probably the next major target on the way up here if it really starts to pop. And then did we do a measured move on this? We didn't. So let's say this is the pattern. If you're trading that, then measured move takes you to, oh, look at that, 8,600. Not a bad correlation there, so it lines up pretty nicely. That's the big target. All right, let's all cross our fingers and say Bitcoin hits 8,500 here soon. Well, soon meaning next couple weeks, not tomorrow. Hey, we've seen it happen before though, right? Let me see. Of every 10 trades, how much trades are bad trades, generally speaking? You know, they come in waves. It's hard to say. And what I do is I pay attention to that, right? Because you'll have a winning streak. Boom, that trade works, that trade works, that trade works. You know, there's going to be losers. That's just part of it. That's just part of the probability speaking. I would say 20, 30% maybe are stopping out, and then the other ones are winning. But it comes in waves, so I'll have a streak, and then all of a sudden, like, one gets taken out, then the other, then the other. If I have too many losses in a row, then I take a pause. That tells me either the market's turning, and I'm getting whipsawed all over the place, so I need to just take a step back, and I either don't trade altogether, or I really reduce my size drastically, or it tells me I'm off, I'm doing something wrong. Right, and that's generally psychological, right? Am I having a bad day? Am I trading in the middle of the night when don't have any sleep and I'm not thinking straight, right? All that stuff. So you got to consider that. But if you're following your rules and you're maintaining your risk management, you can certainly handle a few losses in a row without doing massive damage to your account. Obviously, if you're not and you're going all in, all out every time and you're taking big hits, then it only takes a few losing trades to really set you back. But that's about it. You know, it comes in waves. I'll notice that when the market's hot, I tend to trade more, and I'll have a little bit of a winning streak. And then when I start to see the winning streak losing, then I'll take a pause. It just generally tells me the market's due for a breather. And this space is just so highly correlated that they all move together, right? So if everything starts breaking out, then it's great. Trades are winning. But if everything starts to pull back, even if you're on a good setup, you know, the tide, if you will move all ships, and it'll pull in even the stronger names. And so I hope that answers the question. It's not, I wish it were linear. It's not. You know, my equity curve generally looks like this, right? You get some, and then you get a pullback, and you get some, and then you get pull back, and then you get like bad month of nothing, and then more, right? Like, that's just the way it goes. I wish I could say, hey, it looks like this. It's just beautiful. It's not. Okay. All right, let me circle back here. So some of the names that stood out here, the stronger names, because strength begets strength, focus on the big names. Dash, it's extended, but I'm going to be watching for a little bit of a pause, pull back here. I'm thinking we see it. I got some alerts set there. Monero, I think it's had a good run. Extended here as well. So pausing. Maybe like it's a symmetrical base or something there. That's the 1 hour chart. Neo, I really liked the Neo setup here on the 4 hour view. Already breaking out. 1270 down to around 1250 is an ideal entry if it pulls back. Max stop I'd give it is around 1220. And it's got some pretty good upside targets here. So 1350 and then, you know, 1450. So Neo's looking interesting here. ETH from a big cap name is one of the, you know, the ones that are just now breaking out, charging higher. I think it continues to go to around that 1960 level. Not a big percentage move, but just would be good for the alts all around. At that point, we'd have to see how it looks if it gets that high. Does it start to pull back from there? What were some of the other ones here? Go was extended a little bit. Bitcoin Cash, look for a pullback there. If you like the smaller cap names, Ren was a breakout setup, looks similar to GoChain. GoChain already broke out. That one broke out here. That was a setup back here, so maybe a throwback if you can get it to the 230 level, 238 maybe. And then what else are they looking at here? Aeon, maybe a breakout setup. Yeah, maybe. EOS, I liked EOS. EOS was looking like he wants to pop here a little bit. Not a big percentage move, but tight risk. And then Mana, cup and handle potentially forming there. Keep in mind, these could quickly turn into double tops. If it loses that 430 level, that looks double topish to me. But a breakout over 500 sats, very strong. Let's see, we look at the Cardano Bellways. What else? What else? EOS. That's probably it. There's a few more. We looked at a bunch, but those are probably the ones on my list here. We looked at ADA. We didn't look at Stellar. Stellar Lumens is moving in sympathy with Ripple, with XRP. They tend to do that, but this one also is coming off of a big base. looking nice here. Taking out multiple resistance levels here. Next target up is around 670, and then a big space to around 700. So has room to run on that 4-hour chart. Any pullbacks to this zone would be ideal. Basically right around there. If it can hold above 630, it'd be ideal. So basically between 630 and 650, and then you're looking at upper 60s, closer to 700 would be a good target. Let me see here. What's a good risk reward rate when you set up your stop and your goal? For most alts, and when I'm trading stocks, minimum is 2 to 1. If you can get a 3 to 1, even better. And generally, the difference between a 2 to 1 and a 3 to 1 is just your entry point, right? If you're willing to give it a little bit of time and maybe put some bids lower down below the current price, you can get that little tighter entry, keep the same stop. That gives you a 2 to 1, 3 to 1. With Bitcoin, I don't necessarily have to go that strong. I can give it a little bit smaller, 1.5. But I'll trade it on margin and keep it a little bit tighter there. So if it does hit my target with the margin, it's just a much stronger trade. But you got to be careful with the stop losses on those. So if it starts to turn around, I'd rather get out of the way and get back in later. But generally, that's the way it goes. 2 to 1 is my minimum. 3 to 1 here. Coupon code, is that applicable to members only? No, that's open for everybody. So what you got to do though when you sign up is when you're not logged in, this is going to say log in. If you don't have an account, hit sign up. So it'll make you create an account first, and then after you do that, it'll take you to the payment page. And we use a third party, so none of your payment information is stored with me or my servers or anything. It doesn't even cross my servers. It goes to a third party. So you'll see a pop-up window you can check out there. And then you manage your account through that same pop-up. So later on, if you want to manage your subscription, you open that up. It'll let you change your payment information, cancel your subscription, whatever you want to do. But it's not open. It's open to everybody. So code 2020. If you're part of the Slack group, go check that out. I posted a coupon code there for the Slack members, and so go check that one out. And that will apply to any of the plans: monthly, quarterly, biannual. It's all there. What else? Cool. Let's look at Matic. And so what I'm going to do this week, by the way, is we just launched this here recently. I took a break over the holidays, but now I'm going to do a little bit of updates to the tutorial videos. The last videos were all for the older site setup, and so I'm going to be going through those and redoing the videos on what does this mean, how did I come up with that, how do I use it, the different strategies, what's this trending page, what does it tell me, how do I use it, that sort of thing, what are the alerts. And so I'll start slowly rolling those out this week. What's this bot status page, right? The watch list, all that. So that's coming. Yep, you sure can. So if you're a member on the monthly and you switch to the 6-month, absolutely. Use the coupon code and it will apply. If it doesn't, let me know. I'll fix it up for you on my end. So just shoot me a message. I'm a pretty fair guy. All right, let's see here. What else? I think that's it, my friends. So BCH maybe on a pullback, nice little bull flag, trending higher. I think it needs a breather. A little bit of divergence starting to show up here. So, but it's been strong. Can't complain. From a momentum perspective, XRP is probably the better one to watch here. But I'm looking at the shorter time frame, see if we get a little bit of a pause, little bull flag, and then a secondary leg up. It is clearly extended though short term. So I'm always hesitant to chase those names. Bitcoin. You guys know where I'm on Bitcoin. I think it looks good from the daily. I think it needs a little bit of a breather near term. So I certainly closed out my margin side trade and I'm just going to wait it out. I'm hoping for a pullback on this one here. Yeah, we looked at Raven. There wasn't a whole lot that I liked about it. It's sitting right at support. So if you like it, oh yeah, Matic. If you like Raven, it's right at support. Wouldn't give it much below 290s. Above 330s starts to look positive, but man, that's a tough one. It's just all over. It's a tough one. Matic. I think Matic's the same. It had that big pullback. It's sitting real tight, but other than this would just be a pure counter trend trade for me if I were into something like this, just because, I mean, this candle here was just massive dumpage. It's going to take a lot of work to overcome that. I don't think it's going to happen in one fell swoop. So, you know, maybe a counter trend trade if you like that sort of thing. You know, it's tightening up here. It's setting up for a potential breakout of range. So the range is certainly starting to narrow. If it does break out, I tend to use like a bounce trade target. So the 382 maybe the 50%, right? Then above that, it's just all extra, but I wouldn't generally expect much more on the initial move up, right? If it pulls back and holds and starts going again, then that's a different story. But on the initial move up, that's what I'm looking. But it's just not, you know, it's range bound. It's just indeterminate after that big drop. Technically, it's broken, sitting tight. Yeah, absolutely could be setting up for a break, but it could go both ways. I mean, you can certainly lose this level and just quickly make a new low. So higher risk for sure. Okay, I think that's it, guys. Well, thanks for being here today. Appreciate the interaction and the dialogue. I appreciate the comments. And hey, have a great week. We'll see how this market turns out. I'll probably post another video, maybe not tomorrow, maybe on Wednesday, and we'll go from there. Looking at engine, yeah, needs to take out the trend line first. Other than that, it looks vulnerable here. It looks like it's about to drop out of this descending triangle. So, okay, cool, guys. Thanks. See you all on the next one.